and the Council must be prepared to impose additional and stronger sanctions on North Korean nuclear and ballistic missile programs. This is a real threat to the world, whether we want to talk about it or not. North Korea is a big world problem.
President Trump, in some remarks at the White House we played back to you earlier this hour, saying that, yes, new sanctions against North Korea may be the way to go, as that country has been threatening, among other things, to sink the USS Carl Vinson strike group. Also detained a third American over there, a college professor. So with all of that going on and these new comments in from the president, we bring in former National Security Advisor to Vice President Cheney, John Hanna. And what do you think? Is that the proper response, Mr. Hanna, more sanctions?
Well, certainly more sanctions could help. We've got some in reserve that could be very, very painful to the North Korean economy. And I think, in fact, if we got Chinese cooperation, could actually put that regime at risk of collapse, which is the one thing that we know that young dictator in North Korea really cares about. The key is obviously the Chinese, less the UN, but getting the guys in Beijing to really finally crack down.
The president has made a big deal about his relationship on a personal level with the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, and says they're working well together. They spoke again on the phone, I believe yesterday our time, on Monday Chinese time. What do you think they really are cooperating, or is this just public talk for now?
Listen, I understand why people are completely cynical about the Chinese. U.S. presidents have been trying for more than 2 decades to get them to step up and take responsibility for this North Korean problem. They haven't done it. But I think hope springs eternal, and the fact is that what the president has done in demonstrating he is now prepared to go to the brink of war with North Korea. I think we may have reached an inflection point, and I certainly think it's worth now playing out this Chinese string to see what they're now prepared to do in response to this combination of U.S. threats and U.S. inducements to help the Chinese on our trade relations if they finally do what's necessary.
Well, that's what's been held out, a better trade deal for the Chinese if they do cooperate. What does cooperation look like? What do we specifically want them to do?
Well, listen, there are still Chinese banks that are servicing the North Korean economy and North Korean companies. Those banks need to stop that activity immediately. We need to cut North Korea off entirely from the global financial system. Then there's obviously also the question of energy. Chinese have stopped taking North Korean coal, which accounts for up to 40% of the North's revenue. Now the Chinese have to stop exporting oil to North Korea, or at least hold out that as a real possible threat, because North Korea is entirely dependent on Chinese oil for powering their economy.
So, and if they do that, real quick before we go, what does North Korea do in response? I mean, one of the things that's been said about Kim Jong-un is he's not giving up these nuclear weapons, for anything. He saw what happened to Gaddafi, right, in Libya?
He saw what happened to Gaddafi, but we have to say that Gaddafi finally gave up his nukes when he was under threat. His economy was under threat of crumbling, and he came to the table to negotiate.
And we know how he ended up, and so does Mr. Kim. So
yeah, but this is a high-stakes game of chicken, and that North Korean regime will do nothing unless it feels it's in danger of real collapse and regime change.